How do you make room for God in your life? Do you set aside time during the day to do a devotion or a Bible study? Do you pray throughout your day? Do you sit down and just have quiet time where there's no TV, no radio, no one around to talk to, and just listen to God? Today, I want to talk about how we can take making room for God to a whole new level. We're going to do this in a conversation with my friend, author, and coach, Dana Lyons. She wrote a book about making room for God and how when we do that, our relationship with Him completely changes. It's a really amazing conversation, and I am just really excited to share that with you. I think back to when I was taking my coaching courses way back when I started this whole journey of becoming a coach, and long before I knew I was going to be coaching about retirement. I remember the expert coaches that were teaching us talking about how we needed to clear the clutter to make room for new things in our lives. And the example they gave was, if you buy a new couch, you don't just bring the new couch in and set it next to the old couch, right? You take the old couch out, you move the furniture around, you get rid of the things that are just cluttery and don't add to the beauty of the room because you want that new couch to be the focus. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about here on a whole different level, is clearing out some of the clutter in our lives to make room for the beautiful things that God has for us in our lives, especially during this season of retirement. So I'm just going to ask you to sit back and listen and enjoy, but be sure to stay until the end when Dana kind of wraps it all up in one neat little package with her word of advice. Thanks for stopping by today. I'm excited to share this message with you. Let's get started. Do you fear what lies beyond retirement? What if it's a gateway to a life filled with purpose, meaning, and adventure rather than an end? Discover peace and fulfillment as you boldly enter this new chapter in Courageous Retirement, a Christian podcast. I'm your host, author and coach, Vona Johnson. Let's get started. Dana, thank you so much for being here. I have been so looking forward to this. I want to have a conversation about how people who are thinking about retirement would consider this whole concept of stepping back so that they can revive and really contemplate where God might be leading them in this, what I like to call best season. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we all go through seasons, right? There are seasons all through life. There are seasons. I mean, God even says there's a time and a season for everything, right? We have different seasons of growth. We go from, if you think of the transitions in life, you go from elementary school to middle school, and then middle school to high school, then high school to college, then you're in the workplace. That's education, right? And then you have just periods of life. So you're a child, then what we would call a tweener, and then you go into teens, and then adulting, and then senior living, as some would call it, right?
Yeah.
You go from single to married. We go from married to with children, and then you go from with children into empty nesters and beyond, right? So there's all these different seasons, and then you go from for some it's one career to the next, then to retirement. I mean, all these transitions. Transitions can be messy. Transitions could be incredible. I mean, it goes from one extreme to the other. Yet we all go through it in some capacity. Even just women, right? We go transition into menopause, and so it's just part of life. And I was in a period, to talk a little bit about my book, I was in a period of life was good. Life was good. I had come out I'm originally from New Jersey. We moved here to Oregon 10 years ago, almost going on 11. And it was a hard move, just all around. But if I could go back a year and a half at this point, I was in probably one of the better places I've been since that move over 10 years. A lot of health challenges, move challenges, all those kind of messy transitions. And so that year was really good. That was 2022. And I was trying new things. I was transitioning into other things. Family was good. Marriage was good. Overall, everything was good. And life was busy and full. And yet I was sensing God challenging me. There was something in me, like the depth of me was just like, there's got to be more. It was just these little whispers here and there. Gotta be more. There's gotta be more. And then I started sensing God. I actually, tell you the truth, it's all kicked off for me. I know God has been working on me before this, but I was out weeding spring of 2022, and I was out there weeding. And we bought our house as is. First year, it's like honeymoon period. Second year was not too much. I was able to keep up with the weeds. And third year, I went out there, and the weeds, I think the rain the year before had Miracle Grow in it, because the weeds look like grass. There were so many. And I went out there, and it's just like impossible. So I just picked a spot. I started weeding, and then I had to stand up and give my back a break. And as I leaned on the garbage, I looked around and did a chuckle with God. I was like, I saw some hard places, some soft places, some weeds. We have thorns out here in Oregon that grow everywhere. And I was just like, I feel like I'm living in this real life parable. Ha, ha, ha. I was giggling. And then all of a sudden, my giggle turned to tears, and tears just started streaming down my face. And I didn't, it was a thought in some words I shared internally with the Lord. And then I just kept going with what I was doing. And I weeded, done, long forgot about. But God usually plants and does something and speaks to us and shows us something in one season of our life that he'll deal with in another season. And so here I was now, fall of 2022. And every year I kind of talk to God. I kind of reminisce of like, what has happened so far? We're about to wrap up the year, and what's been good and what's coming. And it was just that time of like seeking the Lord a little bit more. And so I was doing that. And here I am in the Word, and I'm just randomly reading, seeking him on some things. And I get to the scripture, which is Mark 4. You can find it in, Matthew 13 and in Luke 8. And it's all the parable of sower and the seed. Here I was reading about the seed and the soil, and I just couldn't get past some of these verses, which one was about the thorns. And the thorns are one that are all about the cares of this world, the distractions, and desire for other things. It's the deceitfulness of wealth and the desire for other things. It's the one that says because of that, it doesn't produce something. So here I was. It was like, oh, Lord, this goes back to what we were talking about. Well, that's what I was talking about. Of course, God knew that. And so that entire next year, God was showing me different things. He'd take snapshots along my day. Didn't matter what day it was, didn't matter what time of day. He would just randomly make his presence so strong. And he would take like this snapshot, a still snapshot, and have me see it of just what was happening, like a 360 visual. And I would hear, as I was looking at what I was seeing, there's no room for me here. It's not enough room for me here. And it was just like, I felt his heart, and it broke mine. It hurt. And all I would say is, God, I'm so sorry. Anyway, he would show me these things. And then he put me in those images. First, he would show me what he saw as I was looking. Then he took me in the activity I was doing along with those images. And I was like, it was no different. Most of the time, this is what I saw everywhere I went, distracted, kind of disconnected, and I'm doing too many things. So 3 things that just kept coming to me. And then every time he would show me something, I would hear, would you make more room for me? It was a whisper. Would you make more room for me? There's not enough room here for me. So that's what I did. I went through it, and I looked at my schedule. What can I take off? And then I asked him what he saw. And so I rearranged my life that entire year, got rid of things, started doing new things. I looked at the busy stuff that I was doing, like busy work.
Give us an example of some of the busy work that you let go of.
Well, busy work to me, it's not necessarily bad things. Busy work could also be good things, but it wasn't the fruitful things that he would have for me for this season. They may have worked in another season.
Yeah.
It was time to let some of that stuff go. So one of it was the job I had. I stepped into the season before this. God told me to step into a job. I did. I had it for a period of time. And I knew that it was time to let that go. And so I did. I immediately put in my notice. I let that go. Another thing was I looked at what I was doing on my phone with free time. It just wasn't bad. But there, we could do that mindless scrolling. Like, I just want to veg. And then you find yourself there for way too long. What else could I be doing? It was just things that I could delegate to somebody else and things I could have stopped doing that really wouldn't be missed if I stopped doing them, you know. But it was also an opportunity. I wouldn't have called it a career, but it was a job.
It's interesting. Two things came up for me as you were talking about that. One is in a few weeks, couple episodes down the road, I'm going to have a conversation with a woman who has a couple of interesting things happening in her life. But one of them was, some real challenges, court case. It got ugly. And the knowing that she came out of that, and I'm excited to have this conversation with her, but the knowing that she came out of that was that God said, you stayed too long.
Yeah.
I told you to leave and you wouldn't let go. You could have avoided all of this had you let go when I asked you to. So I give you kudos for hearing God tell you to let go when it was time to let go, because we aren't always in tune enough to hear that message. So I think
Well, if you go back to the three things he was really honing in on, talking about the thorns in Mark 4, right? It's the worries and cares of the world, of your day, your life. It's the deceitfulness of wealth, which really it's the deceitfulness of what you think things, career, accomplishments are going to give you.
Yep.
And then the desire for other things. Some translations say that the desire for nice and or other things, Um,
Yeah.
And so anything measured up against Christ being the number one and what he has for this season of our lives is a distraction. It is clutter. It causes us to disconnect.
Right.
And then we start feeling like, what is life? Well, that is a great question, actually. What is life and what's my purpose and what do I do now? Those are all really good questions. And I think,
especially as people are stepping into retirement, right?
right?
Yeah.
Because you've done, for some people, you've done some of them. For some people, it's drudgery, right? It's like, oh, I'm over this job. I just want to retire. But for some, they loved their career.
Right.
It was they felt like they had a lot of purpose and they had a lot of fire and excitement and they're looking forward to the next chapter. But I don't think you realize, for some of us, we'll go through a transition and there is this question now, because they didn't ask it then. They don't quite know what retirement looks like, even though they want to go to the next level. And so now they're sitting in retirement going, what is life? What is my purpose now? Great question.
Perfect question. Perfect. So what are some words of wisdom? What's some advice that you could share with someone that might be listening today on some steps to take to really do what you did and pull back and make room for God?
Well, we all have a choice. Transitions, like I said, can be really messy. But I think that when it comes down to it, you can wrestle. Wrestling is part of the journey. So if they're in the wrestling right now, that's okay. But what I learned was, if anything keeps us from our oneness and intimacy, first and foremost with Christ, if we call ourselves Christian, that's, that is what we're after, then anything that takes away from that really, is it really going to be worth it? Because it does cost us, right? Even those things we insist on holding on to that we think we need, it costs us. And some of those things it costs is intimacy with the Lord. I laid down some things and some were easy, scrolling on my phone, although this is it's just a habit, right? Everybody's doing it, but it's not normal with the Lord, even though it's normal in our society. So the things I was like, this is an easy one. I could lay that down. For some, it's they binge their TV shows. Maybe that's the way you go and your phone's not your thing. There's that kind of busy that it's like, oh yeah, I could just scroll and get stuck. Okay, that's one thing. But there are other things, that we can look at and we choose to lay down, and it could be and feel like a sacrifice. But here's where I would encourage somebody, play with it and try it. Because for some, God may not be doing, and it's not like our phones are bad. It's not like TV is bad. So it's not like you have to throw them out and never do it. It's how much time it's getting of us and the attention it gets of us and how we are now addicted in our brains to do that. But if it's not the screens and it's something else, then I encourage them to just play and take something down for a season. Do something different for a season, because here is the truth. I mean, we could talk about all the different ways in which to do that, but the truth is what we're really after is the fruit of that once we do it, right? What do we get if we do that? And it's not guaranteed. Like, don't try to figure it out. I was just in the moment as this entire year went. I just stayed in the moment with the Lord to obey him at all cost. And I wanted, if the God of the universe wants to be one with us and he wants to be intimate and talk and bring these blessings in our life, I don't want to miss any of them. So I was just in that place. But what I found was every choice I made to get rid of something that brought more of him into my life, I found, which I wasn't looking for, but here's what happened. All of a sudden I noticed, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in rivers of living water right now. I was just in what we call flow.
I remember having conversations.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
It was just like, I didn't see this coming. I thought I was just going to be obedient to God. Like, okay, this is kind of busy work. It's not really fruitful. It just sucks up time in my day. But then it was like my prayer life went from me talking more than him into me listening, and just my prayer life became listen to listen and share that way, that it just flowed. So you're going to notice, you're going to get into this flow that you just didn't see coming. And so, the Bible says, for the joy set before him, the Lord, he endured the cross, right? There's some sacrifice we go through. There's hard times, and retirement for some period may feel like a really hard time. And like, when am I going to get to the good part of retirement? Because I'm struggling right now. Is there a purpose in this? Or am I just waiting to die? If I could say, like, right? For some, that's the struggle. What do I still have to offer? I want to say, if you could endure, this morning I was actually reading, I did not see this until today in this way, but in that same verse. And I say this to the readers because I think most people, they're at least, for some, maybe they'll retire early at 45. I don't know. That's like the few. But people are like 50 and above, right? 55 and above, 60, whatever. They're older, not close. I don't want to say, they're not close to death. They're wiser. Let's just put it this way. You have so much, you have all this experience, and you have grown so much. You have life experience, you have wisdom that you've gained, and there is still more in you to pour into others. So you have all this stuff that you now have, and probably figure out how, really, I think the question sometimes is, when we say, what is life? It's what do I do with all that I've gathered over these years? I had a great career. I have a family. I have this community, but like, who am I? And what I read in this parable, and I encourage your readers to just go read this. It's about the sower and the seed, right? God is always preparing us for something. I don't care if you're 80 or 8. You're always being prepared for the next day, the next year, the next season, whatever it is. And if you find yourself in retirement, there are things that prepared you up until now. You have grown up. You have endured much. And in this scripture this morning, if you read all the different stuff about the seed that was scattered and sown, one of the things it says over in each one, whether it's, the hard path, the rocky, the thorns, or the good soil, is that it says, and when it grew up, what grew up? The seed that was sown in the soil. That's in us. When it grew up. I never saw that. Hard path, never got a chance to grow up. The rocky, it grew some, but it was shallow, so it stayed immature. Yep. Can't really grow, and you can't get to adulthood unless you grow through, maturity. The thorns, that grew with the weeds. It choked out, it chokes out the seed sown. And the good soil grows and multiplies 36, 100-fold more than what was planted. It grew up and flourished much. So here we have people that are going to be listening to your podcast, right? They grow hopefully by the time we actually retire in our careers, we actually have matured and grown up and have gained wisdom, and we have experiences, and now we can still flourish and just pouring into others, sharing what we've learned, starting a new career, gaining new hobbies, and pouring into the community around us. For some, it is simply pouring into your own family that you have all the, you have so much more time to do that than you did when you had your career. And you longed for that time, and now you have it, and you think, is this all I'm doing? You're like, are you kidding me? I wrote in Revive, I wrote in there, one of the things that God brought me through was this moment of remembering and reminiscing with him of all this stuff he brought me through. And then in Deuteronomy 4, he says, don't ever forget what the Lord has done for you. Reminisce. Look, remember all these things God has brought you through. These people are older, right? Okay, adults. And now go and tell, go share it, go pour into, remind the next generation. He is all about word of mouth. He's all about us. We're an extension of him. There's so much more. Even if you're retired, we desperately still need you to pour into us because look, you're handing a baton to us and is a really special moment in time still. They have all the wisdom with actually less stress of working the 40-hour week to pour into us who are still in maybe the 40-hour week or raising families. We desperately need you.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
It's funny because before we hit record, you asked me how my business is going. I'm just transitioning into being a Christian retirement coach, right? And I was,
Yeah.
well, lots of distractions. And that really isn't the right word because I am in the season that God wants me to be in right now. And it's a joy to be able to travel with my husband. And it's a joy to be able to spend time with my grandkids and my friends, a long lunch every once in a while or whatever. And it's okay to sprinkle all of those things, the business and the family and the travel and the getting away from the social media and all. I mean, that's all just a part of it. And
Yeah.
that was one thing that came up. Another thing that came up, and we talked about this too, is I'm reading the book by Charles Swindoll on Paul and his transformation from Saul, who was persecuting Christians. And there's so much good stuff in there. But he talked about when Saul, right after his transition, he went to Arabia 3 years. And all he did during that time, as far as we can tell, was just spend time in the Old Testament, of course, which was all that was really available at that time, and just in prayer and walking with Jesus to learn what it was, the message that he wanted. So, it's like I think there's some of us that are just so used to going, 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 going that the idea of not is, like you said, it's scary. But it's okay, and it's a time to find that balance. When we, I'm all about peace and fulfillment, right? It's by being able to find peace in just taking the next step, not knowing what's coming down the path because we have that wisdom and that maturity. It's finding peace in that, but then also stepping outside our comfort zone on occasion and doing the thing that God's calling us to so that we can be fulfilled and know that we are living out our purpose.
For sure.
And it's one of those things that, when he also talked earlier in this same book about how sometimes we think that when we become a Christian, it's like all of a sudden we have all this wisdom. And it's not like that at all. We
no.
continue to grow all the time. And honestly, so much of, I was doing Bible studies and reading scripture my whole adult life. And some of the things that I realize now, I didn't come to me until some of the struggles that I had in trying to start a business and going after all that wealth and all those things that the world told me that it was all about. So God, you said it, God has a journey for all of us, and we need to find the quiet times to step back and listen to what he has to say, because that is where the revival is, right?
Oh, it is. It is. I didn't know that again, this was not I didn't know the next step that God was bringing me into. I had no idea. But when I felt like I was then just in rivers of living water, just in this deep flow with him. I was so wrapped up in him. But the other thing is I didn't know I needed to be revived until I was. Look, I was busy.
Yeah.
I have a full schedule. I have a big family. We're always doing something. There's always something going on. So it wasn't the lack of busy and I wasn't bored. It was just I knew that there was something more, and God knew, but he had to take me through these moments for me to get rid of some things, to make room for him, because the truth is he's always planning, right? If he's always preparing, he's always planning things in us. And will we make room for him so that we could actually take time to nourish what he's doing? And for some people, it will take getting to retirement on some of the things that's been sown into them. And look, I'm in my 50s right now. And now that I'm through menopause, there are things that hit me along the way after he took me through this book, and I'm still in this season with him, that it hit me one day where I went, because, here, and all right, I'm going to go here because I think maybe some of the listeners might be here. I'm in a place in my life in the gift of being, I think, let me just say, over 50. And I'll just say I'm also a woman who's now in menopause. People can look at that as a negative. I want to flip the table and say, I'm super grateful. Here's why. It was a moment to take a pause in my life to reflect on the goodness all through my life of what God's done, right? Where I've been, what he's done, the struggles he's brought me through, all of that. But I caught myself at this period in my life, the last 2 years in particular, and my prayer to God was like, I want to live outside the boxes I tend to put myself in, beyond the lines that I tend to live behind, and beyond the barriers I can tend to feel stuck behind. I want to bust through those, and I could sense it. And I even said to God, I don't know what those are, but I know you do, and I want to break through them. I could feel it, but I don't know what it is, right? And for some of the listeners, they were too busy in their career. They're raising their family. Then they have grandkids. Now they're retired. And all that distraction of their own boxes and the lines they tend to live behind. And here's why I knew I was stuck in some of them. I would say things like, I'd love to do that, but that's not me. Oh, that you could do that, but I can't do that. We'll never do that. And God, the Holy Spirit would just be like, why are you putting yourself in a box? Why are you limiting yourself? Really? You can't do that? You think you can't do that? Limited belief, right? So I had these moments and I'm like, I don't like that. I want to bust through. I could feel it. So here I am. And here's what I learned, because I'm still in this breaking. As he shows me those boxes, I want to break through them. The truth really is there is joy to be found in the journey every day. Joy. There's so much about this journey. It's a journey of trust, and it's a journey full of joy if we're willing to look for it and enjoy it, receive it. So what is it about retirement? The distraction of work isn't there, but it could be another career for some. Look at you. It could be a career. It could be you're fully into your children and grandchildren. Maybe you get into a hobby that really God has you in for some other reason than just the pure joy of it. Could it be you take up something new you've never tried before? And for some, even in struggles of health, there's still joy to be found and there's still purpose. Here's the truth. You brought up the Apostle Paul and how he went away. The same guy also, was put in a box in a prison cell where he was isolated from people. And if anybody could have said that, he would have been like, gosh, what is my life? Like, I'm now stuck in the cell. I think I should be doing, out there doing these other things. What is life in a cell? There's nothing to do here. And his heart was still, first and foremost, God. And then look at all the letters he wrote from prison to touch all of us. How many years and years and years later? Purpose within a cell.
Beautiful.
Is it beautiful?
Yes.
Love God, love others. What does it look like? I don't know. It's forever changing. And will we move with him when he says move? It's our privilege to figure that out.
It is. And that journey is so different for everyone. The old saying, it's the destination, not the journey, or it's the journey. That can be an ongoing discussion. And I really believe it's both. I think that that's a gift that God gave us, is that we get to find joy and peace and fulfillment in the journey, but then we get everything at the destination. And so we don't have to have that fight anymore. We can love both and enjoy both. So yeah, I love that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we need coaches and people like you who could come alongside us to go, hey, because we could get stuck in our own head. We could kind of get cluttered or confused in our own heart to just trying to figure it out. And sometimes we need that outside person to go, hey, all right, tell me. And who can hear, because we're not so in the midst of it all, like they are in their own life. And we need people to walk alongside us to kind of pull some stuff out.
And we talked about that earlier, even with you and your husband, and
Yeah.
the conversation about, I mean, it's like sometimes we get so focused on what we're doing that we don't even realize the impact that we're having on people. So we do need that person. In my coaching courses that I took, they talked about it being, we need someone to hold up the mirror for us to see the value in what we are and who we are and what we're doing, because we don't see it ourselves. And sometimes we just need somebody to believe in us until we can believe in ourselves.
Yeah, and I also think, the world has one way, and our culture says you got to be doing, you got to produce, you got to go bigger, better, you got to be number one. And if you've had this career, let's go even those who are, wanting to move up, and they have this career that moves up in position, and maybe they've retired at a high position and now they feel down here. It could be challenging because we are ingrained. I've got to be doing, I've got to be the best. I got to go number one. What's my title? Where's my significance of what I'm doing? Normal transition stuff we all have to work out. But God is really after their heart more than anything else. He's after your relationship. He's after your heart. He's always pursuing us. And so what does that look like? And that's different for everybody. So we can't compare. And I think it's the stuff on the peripheral when we look to the right or left to others and go, oh, well, they're doing this and they're doing that and they're off doing life. It's not cookie cutter.
No.
It is so individual. So for some, God wants you to be traveling around the world to touch somebody in another country for a period of time. And others, you'll never go anywhere. You'll be in a small town. And that is no less important than somebody traveling the world.
Oh, this is so awesome. So if someone's listening right now and they're like, yeah, I kind of like this Dana gal, how can they find you? How can they find your book? What, if they want to learn more about Revive or your other books, where would be the best place to go?
Yeah, I mean, they could just go to Dana Lyons, Lyons, danalyons.org or coachdanalyons.com. They could find my books on Amazon. But yeah, they can find me on the website. I do have socials, but I like to just point people to the website because some people aren't on social. Hopefully, if they're taking time to declutter, they're not even on social media. But
well, they're
my books are there. My podcast is there. But,
yeah. They must be at least on YouTube or listening to a podcast, or they wouldn't be hearing this conversation at all. So
true. Well, as long, they can listen to yours, and that's it.
Right. What did we miss? Anything? Is there one key message that can wrap this all up that you would like to leave folks with today?
I would say you can struggle in all the different places you should be, but the sweetest, most important place to be is in God's will. It is paradise. Wherever that is where you should be. So be there. And then don't look to the right or left because somebody else's will look different than yours and they have to be in God's will. So just be. And find joy in the journey because there is joy to be found. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, as usual, we could talk all day long.
All day. Yeah.
It brings me so much joy. And we will do this again because we have other conversations to have.
That's right. Yeah.
But for today, I just really want to thank you for joining me on Courageous Retirement. And I just pray that people heard the real message here and that there's just one place that's really going to bring us that peace and fulfillment that we're longing for. So,
yeah. Oh, one last thing because it's really hit me. It's called Courageous Retirement. So I hope people don't forget Joshua 1:9. Be strong and courageous. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Wherever. So don't ever forget that. So anyway, thanks for having me. I like I said, we could talk all day, but it's a real honor. Thanks, Vona.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. Wasn't that just a great conversation? I just always enjoy the message that God puts on her heart. And I know that that is because she's willing to step back and make room for God in her life. I hope you'll come back in 2 weeks when we're going to continue this conversation. I love how God has been weaving all of these episodes together. Just the same topics keep coming up about, walking in God's will. Our identity needs to be in Him. If you were familiar with my former podcast, Longing for More, you may know that that initially started out as reviving your soul. And that was based on Psalm 19:7. And we'll talk about that another time. But I just love how this came up as revive. And then the next guest actually has a whole event around revival. And she talks about her amazing journey and how God led her into retirement, maybe a little bit reluctantly. I don't know that that's where she thought she was heading. She's got a beautiful story of learning to trust in God. So I hope that you'll come back for that. Until then, I pray that you will engage your faith and always, always live your more.